Gabriel Fitz had never faced a challenge he couldn't handle. A decorated former military officer with years of experience in high-stakes operations, Gabriel had a reputation for excelling under pressure. It was this reputation that earned him a transfer to one of the most unique and classified assignments on Earth, Area 26, a secluded villa complex shrouded in secrecy. Unlike most high-security zones, Area 26 was not home to military experiments or secret weapons. Instead, it served as a refuge for extraterrestrial women beings from across the universe who had sought asylum on Earth. Some had fled from war-torn planets, others from ecological disasters, and a few from oppressive regimes that left them no choice but to leave their homes behind. Each resident carried a story, a world of loss, resilience, and mystery. When Gabriel received the assignment, he knew it would be unlike anything he had ever done. Yet, nothing could have prepared him for the events that would unfold within his first days at the villa. Gabriel's first day was deceptively uneventful. He arrived early, his belongings packed neatly into a military-style duffel bag. After a brief introduction to the villa's security protocols, Gabriel was escorted to his private house near the entrance of the complex. The house was modest but comfortable, equipped with the latest technology to monitor the area and respond to any emergencies. The villa complex itself was breathtaking, a harmonious blend of futuristic architecture and lush greenery. The residents' influence was apparent in the alien flora that thrived alongside Earth's plants, creating a surreal yet beautiful environment. The air carried a faint, sweet aroma, a result of the exotic flowers that glowed softly under the moonlight. Gabriel spent the day patrolling the grounds, meeting the support staff, and observing the unique dynamics of the villa. Most of the residents were polite but kept their distance. He could sense their wariness, perhaps a mix of curiosity and caution toward the new human security officer. By nightfall, Gabriel was ready to rest. He changed into comfortable clothes, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the window, watching the stars. The stillness of the night lulled him into a sense of calm. But just as he was about to retire to bed, the shrill ring of the house phone jolted him awake. Grabbing the receiver, he answered swiftly, "Fitz here." A panicked female voice came through the line, trembling with urgency. "Apartment 11, emergency, help." Before the call could end, Gabriel was already on his feet. He threw on his jacket, grabbed his flashlight, and bolted out the door. The villa, usually serene under the moonlight, now seemed ominous as he sprinted toward apartment 11. When he reached the door, it was slightly ajar. Gabriel pushed it open cautiously, his training urging him to remain alert. The scene inside was unlike anything he had ever encountered. A faint, shimmering mist filled the air, glowing with hues of blue and silver. It clung to the walls and hovered around the furniture, pulsating as if alive. On the floor lay a woman, or rather, a being who appeared humanoid but was unmistakably alien. Her iridescent skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the light of the mist. Her hair, silvery and weightless, cascaded around her delicate face. She was unconscious, her body limp yet somehow still exuding an ethereal glow. Gabriel hesitated for only a moment before moving toward her. The mist didn't smell toxic, but its presence unnerved him. Ignoring his own discomfort, he lifted the woman into his arms and carried her out of the apartment. She was surprisingly light, her fragile form radiating warmth. Back at his house, Gabriel carefully laid her on his couch. He retrieved his first aid kit, though he wasn't sure how useful it would be. Her anatomy was different from anything he had studied, but her breathing, though shallow, was steady. Hours passed. Gabriel kept watch, occasionally wiping her brow with a damp cloth. Finally, as dawn broke, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that shimmered like molten gold. She looked at him with confusion, then gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft yet resonating with an almost melodic quality. "I'm Myra." Before Gabriel could respond, Myra sat up, visibly embarrassed. She glanced around the room, her cheeks flushing a faint lavender hue. "I'm sorry for the trouble," she murmured, standing unsteadily. I'll be fine now, thank you for your kindness. Despite Gabriel's protests, she insisted on leaving. With a final nod of gratitude, she slipped out the door, disappearing into the morning light. The next day, Gabriel couldn't stop thinking about Myra. Her ethereal presence, her vulnerability, and her mysterious aura lingered in his mind. He wanted to know more about her, about what had happened the night before, and about the strange mist that had filled her apartment. His thoughts were interrupted early the next morning by an unusual noise outside his window. Peering out, he saw Myra standing in his yard, holding a garden hose. She was watering the plants, but her awkward movements had resulted in water spraying everywhere, including his veranda and windows. Amused, Gabriel stepped outside. "Good morning, Myra," he called out, a playful smile on his lips. "Is this some kind of alien gardening technique?" Startled, Myra dropped the hose. Her cheeks flushed lavender again as she turned to face him. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered. "The plants here remind me of those on my home planet. I thought taking care of them might help me feel at home. But I think I've accidentally watered your house too." Gabriel laughed, the sound easing Myra's embarrassment. "Maybe I can help," he offered. "You can teach me how to take care of them your way." Myra hesitated, then nodded. Together, they spent the morning tending to the garden. As they worked, Myra began to open up, sharing fragments of her story. She spoke of her home planet, a once thriving world reduced to ruin by ecological collapse. Her voice carried both sorrow and resilience as she described the beauty of her world and the pain of leaving it behind. Gabriel listened intently, struck by the depth of her experiences. In turn, he shared his own story, opening up about his military past and the emptiness he had felt since leaving that life behind. For the first time in years, he felt a connection that went beyond words. Their bond deepened over the weeks that followed. Myra's laughter became a regular sound in Gabriel's home, a melody that seemed to brighten even the dullest days. Gabriel found himself counting the hours until he could see her again. Every interaction felt like discovering a new world, one far more vibrant and meaningful than anything he had ever known. Myra, for her part, was equally captivated by Gabriel. She admired his calm strength, his unwavering sense of duty, and the way he always made her feel safe, even in the midst of so much uncertainty. Her time on Earth had often felt isolating, but with Gabriel, she felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known since leaving her home planet. She began to open up more, sharing stories of her people and their culture. One evening, as they sat in Gabriel's garden under the soft glow of Earth's moon, Myra brought out a small, iridescent sphere from her pocket. It pulsated faintly, its light responding to her touch. "This," she explained, holding it out for Gabriel to see, "is a memory sphere. On my planet, we use them to preserve moments that matter most. It's how we pass down stories and emotions through generations." Gabriel leaned closer, fascinated. "Can I see what's inside?" "This was my home," Myra said, her voice tinged with both pride and sadness. "It was beautiful once, alive in ways I can't fully describe. But we took too much from it. The balance was lost, and our world began to die. Those who could escape left, but many didn't make it." Gabriel reached out, his hand brushing hers. "I'm sorry, Myra. I can't imagine how hard that must have been." She looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "It was hard," she admitted, "but being here with you. It's the first time I've felt hope in a long time." From that night on, the memory sphere became a tool for Myra to share more about her past. She showed Gabriel the traditions of her people, dances performed under twin moons, celebrations of life and growth, and the songs that carried their stories across generations. In return, Gabriel introduced her to Earth's culture, from sharing his favorite childhood stories to teaching her how to make his mother's famous stew. As their relationship deepened, Myra grew more confident in exploring the world outside Area 26. Gabriel took her on walks through nearby forests, where she marveled at Earth's flora and fauna. She was particularly fascinated by the fireflies, which she said reminded her of the bioluminescent insects on her home planet. One evening, they ventured into a nearby town under the cover of twilight. Myra wore a long coat and a scarf to conceal her more alien features, but her curiosity couldn't be hidden. She stopped to examine everything, from the shop windows displaying vibrant earth fashions to the street musicians playing soulful tunes. Gabriel watched her with a mixture of amusement and affection. "You look like a kid in a candy store," he teased. Myra turned to him, her eyes wide with wonder. Earth is so full of life. Even in its imperfections, it feels alive in a way that my world hasn't for a long time. Their outing was going well until a group of curious locals approached them. Myra stiffened, her nerves showing as the strangers asked her questions. Gabriel quickly stepped in, his calm demeanor putting them at ease. "She's from out of town," he explained, his arm protectively around Myra's shoulders, "just visiting for a while." The locals nodded, seemingly satisfied, and moved on. Myra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she whispered as they walked away. Gabriel squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me. I'll always protect you." Back at Area 26, life continued with its usual routines, but there was an undercurrent of tension. The villa's administrators had begun to take notice of Gabriel and Myra's growing closeness. Though the rules didn't explicitly forbid relationships between staff and residents, it was clear that such bonds were frowned upon. One evening, Gabriel was called into a meeting with the head of security, a stern man named Colonel Hayes. Hayes began, fixing Gabriel with a hard stare. "I've heard some concerns about your conduct, specifically your interactions with Resident 11. Gabriel met his gaze evenly. "I've done nothing to compromise my duties, sir. Myra is." "She's an alien," Hayes interrupted sharply. "And while we're here to protect them, we're also here to maintain boundaries. Don't let your personal feelings cloud your judgment." Gabriel left the meeting with a heavy heart, but his resolve was stronger than ever. He couldn't deny his feelings for Myra, and he wouldn't let anyone dictate how he should feel. When he told Myra about the conversation, she was both touched and concerned. "I don't want to cause trouble for you," she said softly. "You're not causing trouble," Gabriel reassured her. "You're the reason I feel alive again, and I'll fight for that, no matter what." As the weeks turned into months, it became clear that their situation was unsustainable. The restrictions of Area 26 were suffocating, and the scrutiny they faced only grew more intense. One night, as they sat together in Gabriel's living room, Myra voiced what they had both been thinking. "Gabriel," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I can't stay here anymore. It's not just the rules or the stairs, it's everything. I need to be somewhere I can truly breathe, somewhere we can be free." Gabriel took her hand in his expression serious. "Then we'll leave, together. We'll find a place where we can start over." Myra looked at him, her golden eyes filling with tears. "Do you really mean that?" "Absolutely," he said without hesitation. "Wherever you go, I'll follow." Their escape from Area 26 was carefully planned, with Gabriel leveraging his intimate knowledge of the villa's advanced security systems. For weeks, he and Myra worked in secret, mapping out patrol schedules, identifying blind spots in the surveillance network, and gathering the supplies they would need. Gabriel's military training proved invaluable, while Myra's keen observational skills helped them anticipate potential obstacles. On the night of their escape, the air was thick with tension. The villa was quiet, its residents asleep or occupied in their own private worlds. Myra wore a dark, hooded cloak that concealed her ethereal features, and Gabriel carried a small pack containing food, water, and a handheld device he had modified to disrupt the villa's electronic sensors. "Are you ready?" Gabriel whispered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Myra nodded, her golden eyes gleaming with determination. "Ready." The two moved swiftly and silently, sticking to the shadows as they made their way to the perimeter fence. Gabriel's modified device emitted a low hum as it scrambled the nearby cameras, creating a brief window for them to pass unnoticed. Myra kept pace with him, her movements graceful and precise. As they approached the final checkpoint, the faint sound of footsteps reached their ears. A patrol guard, armed and alert, was heading their way. Gabriel signaled for Myra to stay hidden while he stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Fitz," the guard said, squinting at him in the dim light. "What are you doing out here?" Gabriel forced a casual tone, routine inspection. "Just making sure everything's secure." The guard hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "At this hour, that's not on the schedule." Gabriel shrugged, his hand inching toward the tranquilizer dart hidden in his pocket. "You know how it is. Orders from above." Before the guard could respond, Myra emerged from the shadows. With a swift, fluid motion, she raised her hand, and a faint, shimmering wave of energy emanated from her palm. The guard froze, his expression dazed, before slumping to the ground unconscious. Gabriel stared at her, equal parts impressed and concerned. "What was that?" Myra gave him a small, sheepish smile. "A little trick I learned back home." "It won't hurt him, I promise." They didn't linger to discuss it further. With the guard incapacitated, they slipped through the final gate and disappeared into the surrounding forest. The journey beyond Area 26 was both exhilarating and daunting. Gabriel had chosen a remote location deep in the countryside, as their destination, a place far from prying eyes where they could build a new life. It took them days to reach it, traveling mostly at night and avoiding major roads. Myra's adaptability amazed Gabriel. Despite the unfamiliar terrain and conditions, she never complained or faltered. Along the way, they faced unexpected challenges. A sudden rainstorm forced them to seek shelter in an abandoned barn, where they huddled together for warmth. Another time, they narrowly avoided a group of hikers who might have recognized Gabriel or been suspicious of Myra. During these moments of uncertainty, their bond grew even stronger. Gabriel found himself relying on Myra's quiet strength and resourcefulness, while she drew comfort from his unwavering presence. One night, as they sat by a small fire in the woods, Myra looked at Gabriel, her expression soft but serious. "You've given up so much for me," she said. "Your career, your home, your safety. Do you ever regret it?" Gabriel reached for her hand, his gaze steady. "Not for a second," he replied. "You're worth everything I've left behind. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together." They eventually arrived at their destination, a small, secluded cabin nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills. The air was crisp and clean, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. "This," Gabriel said, gesturing to the cabin, "is home now." Myra stepped inside, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the modest but cozy interior. The wooden walls were lined with shelves, the furniture simple yet inviting. A large window overlooked the valley, offering a breathtaking view of the sunrise. "It's perfect," she said, her voice filled with genuine awe. Life in the cabin was far from easy, but it was theirs. Gabriel took on odd jobs in the nearby town to support them, carefully avoiding attention. Myra, meanwhile, devoted herself to creating a garden around the cabin, planting a mix of Earth's flora and seeds she had brought from her homeworld. The garden became a sanctuary for both of them. Myra spent hours tending to the plants, singing softly in her native language as she worked. The melodies carried an otherworldly beauty, and Gabriel often found himself pausing whatever he was doing just to listen. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Myra called Gabriel outside. "Come see," she said, her excitement contagious. He followed her to the garden, where the alien plants she had nurtured were beginning to bloom. Their petals glowed faintly, casting a soft, multicolored light that illuminated the surrounding area. "It's like a piece of your world," Gabriel said, his voice filled with wonder. Myra smiled, her golden eyes meeting his. "And now it's part of ours." As time passed, their life together settled into a peaceful rhythm. They worked, laughed, and dreamed of the future. Myra continued to learn about Earth, finding joy in its simple pleasures: a cup of tea by the fire, the feel of rain on her skin, the warmth of Gabriel's embrace. For Gabriel, Myra became his guiding star. Her resilience, kindness, An unyielding spirit inspired him in ways he couldn't put into words. She was a reminder that even in the face of loss and uncertainty, love could thrive and create something new. But their past was never far behind. The shadow of Area 26 loomed over them, and Gabriel knew it was only a matter of time before their absence was discovered. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Myra broke the silence. "Gabriel," she said softly, "if they ever come for us, promise me you'll let me protect you. My power's my connection to the energy of my homeworld. They can keep us safe." Gabriel turned to her, the starlight reflected in his dark eyes. "Myra, I can't ask you to put yourself in danger for me. I brought us here to keep you safe." Myra shook her head, her golden hair catching the faint glow of the moon. "You didn't bring us here alone. We came together. And I won't let anyone take this life away from us." Her voice carried a quiet determination, one that Gabriel had come to admire deeply. He knew better than to argue with her when she had made up her mind, but the thought of Myra using her power's abilities that seemed both beautiful and dangerous filled him with a mix of awe and worry. The days passed peacefully, but the tension lingered like a shadow. Gabriel began reinforcing their home, adding subtle defenses to the cabin and carefully monitoring the area for signs of intrusion. Myra, meanwhile, focused on strengthening her connection to the energy she described as her lifeblood. One evening, she invited Gabriel into the garden, where the alien plants she had cultivated glowed faintly in the darkness. "I want to show you something," she said, holding out her hands. As he watched, the soft light from the plants seemed to respond to her presence, growing brighter and more vibrant. Myra closed her eyes, her expression serene, and the light coalesced into shimmering waves that flowed around her like a living aura. Gabriel stepped closer, mesmerized. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Myra opened her eyes, smiling softly. "It's part of me. And now it's part of this place, too. This energy can protect us, Gabriel, but it can also heal, grow, and create. It's more than just power, it's life." He reached out, his fingers brushing against the edge of the glowing waves. The warmth that radiated from them was soothing, almost familiar. "You're extraordinary, Myra, but promise me you'll only use this if there's no other way. I don't want you to risk yourself unless it's absolutely necessary." Myra nodded, though the determination in her gaze didn't waver. "I promise." That promise would soon be tested. One crisp autumn morning, as Gabriel returned from a supply run to the nearby town, he noticed something unusual. The birds in the forest were silent, and the air felt heavy, charged with an unnatural stillness. Approaching the cabin, he spotted tire tracks in the dirt, fresh ones, leading directly to their home. His pulse quickened as he set down the supplies and moved cautiously toward the house. Inside, Myra was standing in the center of the room, her hands glowing faintly. Facing her were two men in dark uniforms, their posture tense and their hands resting on the weapons at their sides. "Gabriel," one of them said, turning as he entered. It was Colonel Hayes, his expression grim. "You've made this harder than it needed to be." Gabriel stepped between Myra and the men, his voice steady. "I don't know what you're doing here, but you need to leave. Now." Hayes shook his head. "You know that's not an option. Area 26 is missing one of its most important residents. We're here to bring her back." "She's not a prisoner," Gabriel said firmly. "She's free to live her life." "She's not just a resident," Hayes snapped. "She's a valuable asset, and you know it. Do you really think they'll just let her go?" Before Gabriel could respond, Myra stepped forward, her glowing hands raised slightly. "I'm not going back," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I won't be a part of whatever plans you have. This is my home now." The air around her seemed to hum with energy, the faint glow of her aura intensifying. The two men exchanged uneasy glances, their hands tightening on their weapons. "Stand down," Hayes ordered, his tone sharp. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Gabriel raised his hands, trying to defuse the situation. Everyone needs to calm down. No one wants this to escalate. But as Hayes reached for his communicator, Myra acted. With a graceful motion, she released a pulse of energy that disarmed the men, their weapons clattering to the floor. The wave pushed them back, but it was controlled, meant to subdue, not harm. "Leave," Myra said, her voice steady and commanding. "And tell whoever sent you that I'm not coming back. This is the only warning you'll get." Hayes glared at her, then at Gabriel. "This isn't over," he said, his tone laced with menace. "You're making a mistake." The men retreated, their vehicle kicking up a cloud of dust as they drove away. Gabriel locked the door behind them, turning to Myra with a mixture of relief and concern. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with awe. "But they'll be back, and they'll bring reinforcements." Myra nodded, her expression serious. "I know, but we'll be ready." In the weeks that followed, they prepared for the inevitable. Myra continued to hone her abilities, pushing the limits of what she could do while ensuring she remained in control. Gabriel, ever resourceful, fortified the cabin further, setting up traps and contingencies for every possible scenario. Their bond grew stronger with each challenge, their love an unshakable foundation. They knew the odds were against them, but neither was willing to back down. Together, they were determined to protect the life they had built no matter what it took. And as they stood side by side, watching the horizon for signs of their pursuers, they knew one thing for certain: no force in the universe could break the bond they had forged. Not fear, not danger, and certainly not the shadows of their past.